Imagine knowing the exact identities of every laborer and builder stationed throughout that community, handling those specific residential building jobs. Federal agents retrieved snapshot files directly from the security monitors around Nancy Guthrie's estate. These snapshots spanned several weeks prior to her abduction, capturing yard caretakers, swimming pool technicians, and relatives. ABC News initially broke the story regarding this salvaged video, while CBS News verified it. Insiders assured both networks the recordings revealed zero red flags. Yet one glaring inquiry remains completely unspoken by anyone. Which other individuals were actively employed around that vicinity during January? Did detectives actually interview every single one of them? Considering a groundskeeper from Nancy's community recently stepped up, sharing a revelation that absolutely deserved front-page news status. This man informed a reporter that throughout the many weeks following Nancy Guthrie's vanishing, local law enforcement never bothered to approach him for a simple chat. This completely stunned him. It shocked me. You should worry. Assuming you have tracked our ongoing investigation, you already understand the general framework surrounding this mystery. As you recall, Nancy Guthrie was finally spotted late on the evening of January 31st, after her son-in-law, Tommaso Chioni, drove her back to her residence near 9:48 in the evening. Furthermore, authorities declared her vanished the next day, specifically February 1st, after she completely missed an online religious gathering. Understand that the FBI stepped in almost immediately. Furthermore, a combined investigative squad remains highly operational today. Clearly, numerous potential culprits, hypothetical scenarios, and investigative clues exist, while ordinary citizens merely catch brief glimpses of them. This mystery originates with a groundskeeper waiting outside a property quite close to the route Nancy normally strolled with her puppy. Ultimately, things conclude with an inquiry, guaranteed to radically alter your entire perspective regarding whoever possessed the clearance, the insight, and the perfect opening to abduct her. Throughout wealthy districts like the Catalina foothills, homeowners remain practically unseen. These locals work indoors. They vacation constantly. They pay strangers to continuously manage their luxurious estates. Meanwhile, the individuals you constantly spot, those folks stationed outdoors, navigating local roads, and wandering across various lawns, slipping past back lanes, side fences, and service doorways are definitely not the homeowners. Instead, these are laborers, groundskeepers, and aquatic facility cleaners, climate control techs, bug exterminators, glass washers, standard laborers, builders, adding extensions, renovating cooking spaces, or installing fresh shingles, alongside courier dispatchers and alarm installation experts. Inside wealthy communities like the Catalina foothills, these individuals remain actively present on a daily basis. These crews arrive and depart so consistently that actual homeowners hardly ever pay attention nowadays. However, there remains a fascinating truth regarding observation. It constantly works bidirectionally. Laborers notice everything. They spot which properties feature security cameras and exactly where those lenses aim. They notice whose garage stays vacant every single morning at 8 o'clock, alongside whichever vehicle never leaves. Furthermore, they track when the pet gets exercised and exactly when. These folks overhear private discussions floating through unlatched windows whilst pruning the shrubbery. They immediately spot shifting daily patterns, like whenever a familiar vehicle disappears for 7 days, or assuming an unfamiliar stranger suddenly arrives. In modern forensic studies, experts often label this as ambient environmental tracking. It remains an accidental, yet highly detailed awareness naturally acquired over time simply by existing within a specific location continuously. Suburban laborers effortlessly gather these incredible insights without exerting any actual effort whatsoever. Therefore, within a situation where the attacker obviously understood Nancy's daily schedule, intimately understood her estate's layout, and evidently designed a specific tactical scheme, wondering who else secretly harbored identical background data regarding her personal affairs is hardly a trivial inquiry. It remains absolutely paramount. Presently, ABC News first revealed how the FBI salvaged preview photos from security devices bordering Nancy's estate. CBS News corroborated this exact revelation. Weeks of snapshot files predating February 1st emerged, Such recordings originated from movement-triggered lenses monitoring the swimming basin, the rear garden, and side lawns. Meanwhile, according to insiders directly connected with this probe, these snapshots featured yard maintainers, aquatic cleaners, alongside close relatives. Absolutely nothing alarming. However, one crucial detail became completely overshadowed during subsequent media reports. Moreover, this specific point remains among the most critical facts throughout this entire inquiry. Those exact monitors, which recorded ordinary daily movements for several weeks prior to Nancy vanishing, literally filmed zero activity during the actual evening of her abduction. Zero movement-activated photos registered, not even one solitary frame. During the evening of her kidnapping, every lens turned utterly black. Insiders deeply connected to the probe characterized this occurrence as, and I will pronounce this term cautiously, bizarre, unexplained, completely unaccounted for, simply strange. These devices functioned perfectly beforehand, and they operated normally afterward. However, during that single, incredibly crucial evening, they recorded nothing. This perfectly aligns with everything we previously discussed in our broadcast regarding the wireless signal blocker hypothesis. The assumption implies that whoever abducted Nancy utilized a gadget to scramble the local internet transmission, effectively blinding those lenses without physically breaking them. Multiple residents living nearby, Nancy experienced sudden broadband failures that exact evening, while their door monitors simultaneously glitched during that precise time frame. Consequently, this represents a highly recognized threat within the probe. Keep this chilling fact locked in your head as we dive deeper into the abyss. Whoever snatched the victim possessed a flawless map of her security setup, proving they did their homework. We must expose the glaring blind spots in those video previews. Since her home system solely monitors her personal estate, the lenses merely catch anyone creeping near the perimeter, strolling up the pavement, or knocking on her exterior doors, someone trimming hedges a few doors away, or builders hammering on the adjacent block. A suspicious guy idling in a van studying pedestrians for 45 minutes simply remains invisible on those specific recordings. I refer to this terrifying vulnerability as the security boundary trap. In a sprawling area like the Catalina foothills, that creates a massive vulnerability, meaning a stalker could watch her for weeks from nearby yards. They could easily lurk at a neighboring job site or within a parked car just inches beyond the digital lens. The federal agents inspecting those preview images would never see a single trace of that calculated, long-term surveillance. Therefore, insiders claiming the local feeds look totally clean are actually delivering a highly accurate assessment of the evidence. Yet it completely misses the bigger picture, especially considering what a local landscaper revealed to JLR Investigates on March 13th. The Mirror US quickly amplified his shocking commentary. Other outlets corroborated the story independently, detailing a brutally honest observation that totally upends our understanding of this nightmare. Watching those pool guys working behind the house really gave me a weird feeling, he noted. That crew just handled her standard weekly upkeep. It honestly baffles me how authorities running a major kidnapping case would let random people wander around potentially destroying vital forensic clues, regardless of whether the property got cleared beforehand. I definitely would have locked that perimeter down tight until we secured some solid investigative leads. Wildly enough, he claimed law enforcement completely ignored his existence during the entire period following her tragic abduction. Not a single officer or federal agent bothered pulling him aside to check if he witnessed anything strange happening nearby. He admitted that massive oversight blew his mind. When asked about his last encounter with the victim, he estimated it happened roughly 8 to 12 months ago. They shared a quick morning greeting, leaving him with that final mundane memory, which carries terrifying implications for us. Here sits a guy who clocks in daily around the exact spot where she vanished, intimately knowing the area. He understands the locals, tracks daily schedules, possesses keen observation skills, yet remains completely unquestioned by the task force. Please let me tread carefully here for a moment, because I am absolutely not accusing this groundskeeper of anything. Nobody is trying to attack his total innocence. My point is, he represents a crucially important resource, making the police's bizarre failure to question him a massive red flag regarding the true scope of their current investigative strategy. Any basic neighborhood sweep during a kidnapping crisis requires maximum effort, especially when a prominent figure vanishes from a quiet suburb. Authorities must grill everyone frequenting those specific city blocks. That means tracking down postal workers, cornering courier services, and grilling the local builders. Naturally, it demands speaking with the groundskeepers, sweating right outside the target's front gate. Assuming detectives ignored him by March 13th, we must intensely wonder how many other blue-collar regulars slipped through their fingers. What critical clues did those silent bystanders witness while the landscaper missed spotting her for nearly an entire year? Even without an exact date, his rough timeline speaks volumes regardless of the specific details. It is frankly staggering to consider this massive gap, where a neighborhood regular completely missed seeing a prominent local resident for 12 straight months. Consider the weird reality of a maintenance guy missing someone in such a claustrophobic, wealthy bubble. That proves she essentially vanished from her own porch and walkways long before the actual crime occurred. Perhaps she took trips, hid out in the backyard exclusively, or adjusted her schedule completely. Alternately, and this thought seriously chills the blood, she might have actively been hiding from a perceived threat. Our past deep dives explored how her abduction looked highly calculated rather than a spur-of-the-moment tragedy. If she sensed a stalker lurking prior to February, forcing her into a highly guarded routine that radically changes everything, her sudden disappearance from the exposed sections of her estate suddenly feels like a deliberate survival tactic. Let us ignore that terrifying thought for now and focus on the practical nightmare at hand. Should a constant fixture on her block completely miss her presence for 12 whole months, figuring out who actually spotted her last becomes the absolute most vital piece of this twisted puzzle. Were hidden predators tracking her final moments alive? Think about those final, critical hours leading up to February 1st. Did her predictable daily habits suddenly expose her? And exactly who was exploiting that fatal vulnerability? Let us pivot straight to the building site angle, perfectly aligning with our headline's explicit focus. I need to break down exactly how this theory originated and why digging into it is absolutely crucial. Let me shoot completely straight with you here. Law enforcement has absolutely not named a single builder or manual laborer as an official suspect in this ongoing investigation. Yet, anybody aggressively claiming the opposite is simply making wild leaps beyond the actual facts, and I refuse to play that irresponsible game. Instead, I will map out precisely why those active building zones around the Catalina foothills during January and early February represent a highly credible investigative lead, and why federal agents must pursue this avenue if they are not already investigating it. That upscale foothills community boasts incredibly steep real estate prices, endless remodeling projects, and fresh foundations being poured constantly. During those crucial January weeks, right before she inexplicably vanished, crews were undoubtedly hammering away nearby. These job sites sat right within striking distance and clear view. Laborers clocked in at those spots daily. They essentially formed their own highly predictable, completely unnoticed daily rhythm across the block. Most importantly, these guys held the perfect, legitimate excuse to linger around that affluent neighborhood for hours on end without raising eyebrows. Just visualize the physical layout. A remodeling crew positioned just a block or two over possessed an unobstructed line of sight to her exact driveway. They absolutely watched her vehicle pulling out and returning daily. Those daily patterns became glaringly obvious. An idling utility van parked near a curb triggers absolutely zero alarm bells. Nobody summons the authorities over a contractor vehicle. Nobody demands identification from builders in an area overflowing with endless ongoing home renovations anyway. That provides absolute camouflage. Perfectly legal, invisible, unquestioned camouflage for an abduction demanding intense staking out, precise execution, and rigorous staging. That disguise means everything. So, did investigators review city paperwork? Tucson municipal building authorizations are completely public. Every single ongoing renovation up in those foothills during January ought to pop right up in the local government databases, meaning whoever filed for those jobs can be quickly named. Any authorized squad working that specific postal code during that time frame exists clearly in the official files. We simply must ask if detectives actually bothered matching those details up. If they downloaded those authorization logs, pinpointed all the active work sites encircling her address, and subsequently went out to interrogate each individual laborer hanging around that zone throughout January and those crucial early days of February. Judging by the landscaper explicitly telling reporters he was never even questioned by authorities. It seems incredibly obvious. Their neighborhood sweep fell short. That presents a massive vulnerability. Earlier in our coverage, I laid out something we titled the internal intelligence theory. The underlying logic was straightforward. The eerie details surrounding her vanishing heavily imply the culprit possessed remarkably intimate, highly specific data regarding her daily existence. Her residence, her timetable, her family dynamics, and her weaknesses. You cannot glean that level of insight just cruising past. That requires dedicated lurking or an inside informant. We previously tested this exact concept against a few different realistic scenarios. Relatives, social circles, casual contacts, and domestic staff. Right now, I need to pivot this lens toward a massive group we completely overlooked. The sprawling network of blue-collar professionals quietly maintaining these affluent suburban communities. Just think about the sheer volume of intel a tradesman absorbs after frequenting a subdivision. They memorize security pins because residents hand them over casually. They figure out exactly which entryways remain unsecured during ongoing construction projects. They discover who owns protective pets and who lives alone. They map out the active surveillance lenses and memorize every single blind spot. They learn everybody's personal timetables simply because folks directly inform them, "I am gone from 10 until 2 o'clock, so simply use the garden entrance." None of this implies some inherent malicious design. It is merely standard. Practical communication occurring constantly between affluent homeowners and their hired help across upscale enclaves like those foothills. It feels entirely mundane until it reaches a dangerous individual. Then it transforms into a tactical master plan. Let us push this logic deeper. Imagine if our hypothetical suspect never actually required physical entry into her exact home. What if they just lingered nearby long enough to construct a mental directory, block by block, regarding exactly who stayed home, when, and accompanied by whom? Suppose her daily pattern simply morphed into another useful statistic filed away in their psychological blueprint of the avenue. We already confirmed this abduction was never random. The precision, the execution, the disabled security feeds, and the suspected electronic interference. Every single detail screams premeditation. Masterminds crave inside secrets. Scouting upscale neighborhoods such as the Catalina foothills flows smoothly when the spy possesses a valid excuse for loitering. Fading seamlessly into the local scenery is an absolute must. Finding an individual showing up daily without triggering any alarm bells is key. A local yard worker perfectly matches this profile. Builders naturally blend right into this category. Swimming pool maintenance staff work wonderfully too. Yet currently, authorities completely skipped questioning at least one such individual. Our live coverage of this developing situation from Tucson, Arizona continues today. Federal agents recently published multiple images and moving footage depicting an individual deemed a possible person of interest regarding the missing Nancy Guthrie. Merely a focus, uncharged. We now turn straight toward our lead nationwide reporter Brian Enton, currently stationed around the Tucson region. Connecting via telephone. Brian, this development definitely feels like a massive turning point. Looking back at past offenses, detectives investigating suburban kidnappings or brutal murders frequently trace their critical clues right back toward individuals employed within various daily domestic maintenance positions. Examining this specific behavioral trend deserves a moment of our time. I am definitely not trying to hype things up. Instead, this recurring tendency reveals crucial insights regarding exactly where detectives must actively direct their immediate focus moving forward. Most identical crimes share a specific characteristic that behavioral analysts formally label as advanced scouting activity. Guilty parties rarely struck without warning. The perpetrator observed quietly. Analyzing the victim's surroundings thoroughly came first. Furthermore, these perpetrators operated while utilizing a flawless camouflage shield. Within suburban zones, this disguise basically requires possessing a valid excuse for hanging around, employment duties, standard workwear, or driving vehicles displaying corporate branding works perfectly. Applying this concept to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance hardly guarantees any specific culpability. It actually confirms absolutely zero. However, it builds an incredibly familiar psychological profile. Police departments recognize this framework. Crime scene experts understand it deeply. Consequently, whenever an abduction strikes an affluent suburban community, Interviewing every single local laborer becomes an absolute mandatory necessity. You simply cannot put this off until later. Canvassing crews must genuinely serve as the initial organized tactic. Learning how a landscaper operating along Nancy Street somehow dodged police questioning by the middle of March, remaining totally uncontacted past 6 full weeks since she vanished, signals either a massive oversight or suggests detectives possess such incredibly solid clues they deliberately avoided conducting a broader neighborhood sweep. Honestly, predicting the exact truth behind their strategy remains impossible for me. Yet rushing into tunnel vision guarantees crucial bystanders will undoubtedly slip through the cracks. Losing key bystanders inherently guarantees losing crucial physical proof. Federal multi-agency squads currently spearheading this active search remain remarkably secretive about sharing any details whatsoever. Listen, nobody is actually complaining about their silence here. Withholding sensitive details during abduction hunts provides massive tactical advantages for law enforcement. Tipping off the culprit regarding exactly where detectives might be snooping is a truly terrible idea. Publicizing gathered clues prior to officially cuffing the offender ruins everything. Maintaining strict tactical secrecy carries immense importance here. However, certain facts remain undeniable today. The assigned unit stays incredibly busy. Analyzing those surveillance tapes proves their intense dedication toward the digital forensics angle. Deploying heavy national assets clearly indicates authorities view this nightmare with the absolute utmost gravity. Moreover, considering our current timeline while broadcasting this specific news segment right now, sitting past 6 full weeks without witnessing any official arrests or identifying formal suspects openly points straight toward 2 incredibly distinct possibilities. Detectives might be secretly constructing an airtight prosecution around an amazing clue, or their progress recently slammed into a massive roadblock requiring fresh perspectives. This whole surveillance tape aspect definitely catches my personal attention today. Leaking that snapshot narrative directly into the mainstream media, initially via ABC News before CBS verified things, happened completely by careful design. Police departments rarely grant reporters access to sensitive data without a brilliant master plan. Timing that crucial data dump precisely over 6 weeks later carried a highly specific, calculated, strategic purpose. Perhaps officials intentionally waved a warning flag directly at individuals captured within those frames. Or they desperately wanted everyday citizens calling in after spotting familiar faces or trucks moving across the screen, assuming they wanted public help, provided detectives truly prayed locals might name the laborers caught on tape. The landscaper contacting the press flawlessly aligns with their ultimate goal of driving fresh community leads. News regarding the Osmo probe quickly reached his ears. Realizing nobody ever questioned him, the man immediately phoned a reporter. Everyday folks stepping up like this is exactly what society needs. Now we wait and see how detectives handle his bold statement. Shifting gears. Addressing a deeply awkward yet entirely crucial topic requires a tremendously delicate touch from me right here. Massive underground gig economies thrive throughout both the Catalina foothills and broader Tucson regions. Cash-paid daily hands. Off-the-books, gardening crews, and transient hands constantly switch gigs without leaving any official employment traces behind. Undocumented individuals naturally fill these roles. Folks who, driven by numerous incredibly valid motivations, prefer staying hidden. Trust me, these folks will never freely walk up to federal agents for a chat. That implies absolutely zero illegal activity here. Almost all of these laborers are completely innocent individuals. They simply want to earn a living out there. However, from a detective's perspective, having such a massive off-the-books workforce around this specific district severely complicates witness gathering, especially since traditional detective tactics like yanking official payroll documents, calling certified boss, or running formal database screenings simply reveals the officially employed crew. Meanwhile, guys getting handed paper cash, jumping from team to team, lacking permanent bosses or even reliable mobile phone contacts, entirely slip past the radar of any typical police sweep. Should any of these individuals actually witness a crime, detectives might forever stay in the dark, unless proactive, specialized field teams directly target this underground economy. For major scandals, certain detectives team up with local charities, Hispanic broadcasts, or labor advocacy unions to successfully engage this exact demographic. Did authorities try that here? We honestly have no clue. The only confirmed fact is that one landscaper, who spent enough time here to know Nancy Guthrie and actually notice her sudden disappearance, still had zero contact with authorities by mid-March. This single detail heavily implies that any off-the-books networking, assuming it even exists, remains incredibly flawed. There is another completely overlooked detail regarding the building and yard maintenance perspective that blows my mind. Wintertime in Tucson looks entirely different from a freezing Minnesota January. You will not find icy soil or brutal weather halting exterior labor out here. Up around the Catalina foothills during January, yard guys, stay busy. Builders hit their regular deadlines perfectly. Swimming pool cleaning continues. The sheer amount of exterior laborers roaming that subdivision right before Nancy vanished never dropped because of the winter season. Activity stayed completely average, meaning the amount of possible onlookers, and maybe even suspects capable of long-term staking out, remained significantly higher than any Chile region during this exact same period. Laborers were everywhere. Crowds shuffled around those streets daily, leaving observers on every corner. Yet currently, the authorities somehow failed to interview all of those folks. Let me pause for a second and highlight a crucial reality. Nobody grasps the complete extent of the Federal Bureau's operations so far. We are entirely blocked from viewing their official detective files. That groundskeeper chatting with JLR Investigates is merely a solitary clue, just a lone guy claiming he got completely ignored. You cannot treat that as absolute confirmation of a totally failed neighborhood sweep. National law enforcement frequently conducts massive operations hidden entirely from the press. Detectives might have interrogated countless tradesmen in secret, keeping everything completely hidden from public view. However, the landscaper speaking up, especially choosing a reporter over the actual cops, acts as a massive red flag all on its own. If a possible observer feels forced into the spotlight just to get an audience, it generally implies official networks completely missed them. We absolutely must treat that glaring oversight seriously. Allow me to break down 3 potential realities regarding the Bureau's current stance on this specific laborer and monitoring issue, and afterward, I will reveal my absolute top theory based strictly on all the available evidence. Situation number 1, detectives completely exhausted this specific trajectory already. They interrogated every single laborer they could track down, collecting crucial intelligence. And those details either proved this was a dead end, or directed them right at a targeted suspect they are currently investigating in absolute secrecy. That vocal yard guy merely slipped into a random bureaucratic blind spot. Maybe his specific team got mentioned during discussions about a boss, and authorities never grasped that he was an independent contractor requiring a face-to-face chat. If this theory holds, the case is way more advanced than anyone realizes, and the laborer aspect is finished. Theory number 2. The detective work remains intentionally hyper-focused. The authorities lock their sights on a distinct suspect, or a group, executing a precise strike instead of casting a massive net over town. Following this logic, our landscaper got bypassed simply because local blue-collar guys never mattered. They focused entirely on a previously identified target instead. Law enforcement recognized the tradesmen as a valid clue but purposefully ignored them, fully convinced they already caught the bad guy. Option number 3, the neighborhood sweep genuinely contains massive holes. The underground employment sector, neighborhood size. Plus, the nightmare of tracking down and interrogating every single laborer active around that zone over several consecutive weeks absolutely spawned terrible blind spots for the detectives. The groundskeeper conversing with JLR Investigates embodies a genuinely neglected witness category. In this specific reality, crucial evidence might still be floating around totally undiscovered. I've torn this entire case file apart from top to bottom. The real story likely bleeds options 1 and 2 together, while leaving that third theory far more open than detectives ever want when juggling various task forces and a highly controversial VIP target. Let's be brutally honest, Savannah Guthrie's massive celebrity status turns this into an absolute powder keg. We constantly face one dangerous reality. Blindly chasing one hot suspect forces detectives to completely abandon the broader crime scene way before every rock gets turned over. That landscaper proves our overall picture remains dangerously unfinished. Which brings up a nagging thought I've had since day one. Tying this to Guthrie instantly exploded the investigation into headline news. triggering a massive chain reaction with completely opposing results. Looking at the positives, that overwhelming media spotlight flooded tip lines and dragged the feds into town, rescuing what would normally become another forgotten hometown cold case. That undeniably helped out. But conversely, the ravenous press zeroed right in on Nancy's absolute inner circle without hesitation. We're talking toxic family secrets, intimate partners, and anyone whose reputation was already floating around the edges of this nightmare. Any massive investigation naturally gets sucked into a black hole of juicy domestic disputes, Hollywood ties, and previously famous faces, because that stuff drives engagement. Let's be real, that exact sensationalism has completely hijacked most mainstream reporting. And honestly, even parts of our own breakdown. Yet the raw data proves that abductions rarely stick to just close friends. Frequently, the real threat lurks in the shadows, those background characters who memorize a target's daily routine far better than they know the actual person. Any random contractor working down the block for months requires absolutely zero personal connection to Nancy herself. Nobody cares about her private digits, her government identification, or who her relatives are. Predators only watch for shifting lights, empty driveways, and isolated moments, making it incredibly cheap and easy data to gather. Take a wealthy enclave like the Catalina foothills. That surveillance is freely handed to any patient lurker willing to watch. We need to seriously dissect that security video right now. Considering the major networks completely botched, explaining the underlying tech, when major outlets announced the Bureau pulled weeks of leftover photo snippets from her setup, they were highlighting a very unique quirk in modern digital surveillance gear. By default, these rigs simply refuse to record 24/7 rolling video. Instead, they grab quick movement-based bursts, instantly spitting out blocky little preview pictures right next to those active files. These tiny snapshots get buried away, sitting quietly on hard drives or hidden deep online, surviving forever. Even if the high-definition master files get completely wiped. Why does that matter so much? They hand detectives a gritty, frame-by-frame history stretching way past the normal archive limits, meaning those digital footprints survive even after a suspect purposely trashes the main system. They essentially paint a blurry picture of everyone creeping near that house over a long time frame. As mentioned previously, her front door lens lacked a paid plan, forcing tech wizards to painfully extract those clips straight out of Google's hidden server vaults. However, the perimeter lenses guarding the back gate and swimming area operated entirely differently. Those specific units tripped on movement, hoarding leftover digital scraps entirely offline. That loophole let federal agents easily yank the photos months later, while that porch lens demanded an insanely complex rescue mission just to get anything. This case teaches us something deeper than crime. It reveals how easily we overlook what truly matters. In a quiet, wealthy neighborhood, everything seemed normal. Workers came and went, daily routines repeated. Nothing looked suspicious. And yet, hidden within that ordinary rhythm was a dangerous truth. Someone was watching, learning, and waiting. The most powerful lesson here is awareness. Not fear, but awareness. We often assume safety because things feel familiar, but familiarity can create blind spots. The people we ignore, the patterns we repeat, the details we dismiss, those can become vulnerabilities. At the same time, this story highlights the importance of every voice. A single overlooked witness, a groundskeeper, held potential insight, yet was never asked. That silence matters, because sometimes the smallest observation can unlock the biggest truth. It reminds us that responsibility doesn't belong only to authorities. It belongs to all of us. Paying attention, speaking up, questioning what feels off. You don't need to be an expert to make a difference. Sometimes, all it takes is noticing something others didn't.